that police did do a welfare check on Ja Morant this morning after his concerning social media post per TMZ Sports. They said that he's fine, and he told them that he's, quote, just taking a break from social media. If you were not familiar with what this is in reference to, Ja Morant earlier this morning put a bunch of posts up on his Instagram, and it was showing love to various members of his family, saying how much he loves them. And then the last post was a picture of Ja Morant being interviewed, and it said, these are the pictures here. So giving love to his daughter and his family. And the last post was him being interviewed saying bye. A lot of people took that to mean a bunch of different things. And I guess it was serious enough for, the police to go ahead and do a welfare check. I don't know if they took that and did that on their own accord, or somebody from his family or his camp asked them to do a wellness check. I think that's usually how it works. Somebody has to call them on your behalf. They don't just go around looking at social media and making those wellness checks. But so that's the update. He's fine, which is good to hear. And he's just taking a break from social media, which could be beneficial for him.
So what do you think is going on in his head right now, right? Like, obviously, this is the second incident. It's been very public. He's been scrutinized to the fullest. Now he's had, almost 2 weeks to sit on it, meditate, think about it. What do you think is going on in Ja's world right now?
I think there's a few things. I think that it's disappointment in himself. I think it's maybe embarrassment in himself. I think it's maybe frustration in himself.
Yep.
This is why I particularly, when talking about things like this, and I know people, initially said I was making excuses for him, but I'm somebody who I tend to try to see things from multiple angles, multiple perspectives, because things aren't always what they seem to be. And while, yes, you can go ahead and chastise his behaviors, and we all have said that they're not, the behaviors of a superstar in this league, and that he has a responsibility, although he is young, to be better and to be an example not only for his own fans, but for the brand that he works for, the NBA. But I think this is why I also, when having these conversations, I tend to lean, towards the side of grace also, because you really never know what somebody is going through.
Right.
And thankfully, he's okay. But if he wasn't, there'd be a lot of people who would feel bad about the way that they have approached this story. And you can go ahead and hold someone accountable, but you can also do it with kindness. And I think that people forget that in this hot take business that we're in, where it's a lot of stories being shared and a lot of opinions and perspectives and different walks of life. But I would want people, we're not talking about wins and losses. We're not talking about should he have taken that shot, should he have not. We're talking about people's lives. Yeah. We're talking about individuals. We're talking about human beings. And it's important to hold people accountable and have, your opinions, and everyone's entitled to that, but you can do it with kindness. And I just wish that when it came to this topic and a bunch of other conversations that we have had about players who've come out about having mental health, issues, or just, dealing with, the trials and tribulations of being a superstar in the league, I just wish that people were a little bit more understanding that they're athletes, but they're human. And we always talk about humanizing athletes, but I think that a lot of people forget that when they don't agree with the action of the athlete.
Right.
So
listen, and that's why I appreciate this opportunity that we have where we can be on YouTube telling our stories or covering sports the way we want to cover sports, because, that's what sells on other networks and the traditional major platforms is they're going to lean into the controversy and they're going to bash. And they forget that at 23, where they were and the mistakes they made. They also seem to forget, and this is one of the reasons, and I shared this story before, why I'm not on FS1 anymore, is because there was a few people covering, we were talking about Kawhi Leonard one time, and they're bashing Kawhi Leonard. But this same person privately.
Kawhi when he was on the Clippers?
Yeah, just like Kawhi late to the plane. He got his own little setup when he arrives at arenas. He's isolated, bashing Kawhi. And some of this stuff was valid, right? Like, Some of the stuff, we should have been talking about it, but the way they were talking about it and not also holding themselves accountable, I was like, I don't dig this, right? And basically, it's like you can go out there publicly and talk about people this way, but privately, you're worse. That don't add up to me. Now, if you come out and say, Ja Morant this, Kawhi Leonard this, Kyrie here, KD this person, OBJ that, and then say, I too, made mistakes, or I too still deal with certain things like that, then I can listen to you, then I can respect you. But if you don't hold yourself accountable privately, I don't dig that, right? And so that's what they forget. I will say this about Ja. You got Shady McCoy calling me now. I will say this about Ja. He's young. This was boneheaded. He did it twice. And he is hopefully at rock bottom when it comes to being a pro athlete, right? Because you got to learn how to be a pro. And being a pro, it's like how you conduct yourself on and off the court, the pitch, the field. It took me until I was about 26 to finally understand what that looks like, right? And even still to this day. And I took something from the Devontae Adams conversation I had with him Friday in Vegas. He said every day when he walks out the house, he says, don't embarrass your wife, don't embarrass your kids, and make sure you protect the name on your back, right? And over the last 5 days, I've been doing that, like leaving the house, like, yo, protect my name, like just using that as a little reminder, protect my name. So it took me a long time to understand that, and it's still to this day, I feel like all of us need to remind ourselves, how to integrate into the world, because the world's a nasty place. And that's why I do push a little bit back on you, Ashley, when we talk about this media thing, is because if we're expecting the media, if we're expecting people in the chat, if we're expecting the world to be nice to us, we are going to get our ass kicked.
It's not about me expecting people to be nice, but I think it's about, when you have a platform and you have a voice that has an audience, I feel like it is your responsibility to use that wisely.
Right.
And that's, the same thing we hold athletes to accountable for. We're talking about this now with Ja Morant. The reason that people are upset is because he does have a platform, and it does mean that you are held to a different standard than a regular person on the street. And I don't know, I'm not expecting people to, just, sugarcoat certain things, but it's like what you said about being accountable.
Right.
But that accountability also pertains to the people reporting stories. One of my favorite quotes is, every time you point a finger, there are three pointing back at you. None of us are perfect people. And I would just and I know people will say, oh, you're so pro athlete. I am, because at the end of the day, they're human. So it is not my responsibility to pass judgment. It's my responsibility to give opinions. It's my responsibility to give those opinions responsibly, but it's also my responsibility to give those opinions as kindly as I can, because we're all dealing with things. We're all human. We're all imperfect. And while that responsibility may not lie on somebody who's, on a YouTube thread or on Twitter or in a Reddit conversation because it's anonymous,
right,
when your face is attached to the things that are coming out of your mouth, it 100% is your responsibility to lead with kindness and to lead with the understanding that this is my opinion,
right,
but I'm not perfect.
Right.
So it's not my responsibility to go on air and call you a dumbass,
right,
or call you ignorant, or call you out of your name. It's my responsibility to share my thoughts on a story, report that story, but do so with kindness. And there's too much of a blurred line when it comes to that. There's too much name calling. There's too much not understanding that these are people. And I don't like that.
I love when I hear that shit on ESPN and FS1, because it gives people like us a bigger platform and a bigger voice, because they're going to continue to do that and sell. And I think Pat McAfee said this because he just actually did a big deal with ESPN. So it's going to be interesting to see how all this shapes out, and, how the platform stays what it is today, authentic and real. But he talked about, him doing it a new way. And that way being, you don't have to go out there and sensationalize shit. You don't have to go out there and just talk about all the negative stuff around players, right? So when they do that, I feel like it gives us an opportunity to actually do it the way that we call right. You know what I'm saying? But I still think players should be held accountable. And we're saying the same thing, course. Right? And for me, the way I always do it is always put my place in their shoes. I always put I always put myself in their seats, right? Like I think about that. It's like, all right, well, when I was in this situation, I made this mistake, so I can understand it, but your ass still need to get it right. And so when it comes to Ja, can we put those photos back up? And this is Ashley Nicole Moss, Brandon Marshall, Corey in the cut, Woo out west, BC in the booth, and Mysterious Manderville. I finally hit it. That was smooth. On Paper Route, Faction Talk, Channel 103 on SiriusXM, to all of our listeners and everybody on YouTube that's rocking with us and been rocking with us for a minute. But we're talking about Ja Morant, so let's put those photos back up. A lot of people were concerned that he is maybe sending a message, right? Like, is this it? We got to say it. Suicide, we're scared to say that, because when you say, I love my mom, I love my dad, I love you, baby, to his daughter, and then say bye on social, that's scary. So this is Ja Morant. He put this out. Was this yesterday or today?
No, it was this morning. It's also highly disingenuous to me that the same people who were quick to call him a liar, the same people who were quick to say, oh, he's not dealing with anything, the same people who were quick to call him names are the same people who are now like, oh my God, I hope he's okay. And that's the problem when you don't lead with kindness, when you don't lead with grace, when you don't have it in you to walk the line between holding someone accountable and just being mean-spirited.
Well,
you don't know what people are going through, and it's irresponsible. You can't expect a lot from people within social media. I hate to say it, but you can't. But you should be able to expect a lot of people who have platforms. And it is highly irresponsible the way that these athletes are reported on. They are people, they have families, and what happens on the court is free game. When you start talking about people's families and you start calling people out of their names and you start just hitting below the belt, it is so egregiously ugly, and I can't respect it. It's just not okay. It's hypocrisy, because if the roles were reversed, it would be a problem.
Right.
Because it's the same people, when those athletes get on Twitter and fire back, all of a sudden, oh, I'm just doing my job. No, you're being an asshole. That's not doing your job. It's your job to report on stories, and it's your job to do so responsibly. Your job is not to be an asshole. That's a choice.
Right. No, I agree with you, and that's well said. I will say this, right? I think this is an opportunity for a lot of people to learn and understand, and including Ja, right? Because it comes down to signs and symptoms. We don't know when people are suicidal. We don't know when people are dealing with anxiety. Sometimes people may have a panic attack, and some people think they're dying or they're having a heart attack. But we don't know how to, weed between the two, or decipher between the two. Am I saying that correctly? But anyways, you guys are following me here. So it comes down to signs and symptoms, and Ja Morant, right? When you have behavioral challenges and things that show up like that, it makes it easier for people to play into that narrative. And Ja does need help, right? Ja does need to talk to someone, whatever he's dealing with, right? Because the answer is not, continue to act like you from the hood and from the streets and doing those things. And this is a lot of times you have to take these things serious, but sometimes it's a call for help, right?
Yes. Two things can be true, though.
Yeah, 100%. So for him, that he's hurting, he's struggling right now. I remember when I was in this situation too, like in my own situation, but similar, where the whole world, I made a dumb mistake, and then the whole world is talking about me. Like, he's sitting there watching ESPN. He's seeing all of this. And that's one of the hardest things, is seeing your name go across the ticker on some dumb shit. That is one of the hardest things. Like, it's like an out-of-body experience. Yeah. The whole world is talking about you. Everybody on ESPN, FS1, YouTube, Paper Route, talking about you. And you sitting here and you just like, damn, on Twitter, seeing on Instagram, people messaging you, and you got to sit with that, right? That's tough. I sat in my theater room for 2 weeks, didn't leave, so I know exactly where Ja is right now, and still no excuse. Hopefully he bounces back. He gets the help and the advice he needs to come back a pro. I just think I really think it's immaturity. And he said something big in 21. He was sitting down with Taylor Rooks, and he talked about mental health, and most athletes deal with this. A big part of why a lot of guys struggle is because they're like Atlas, right? Atlas, y'all ever seen that statue of the dude holding up the world, right? So think of an athlete and they're holding up all their families, right? Couple generations. Everybody's expecting you to do everything. And he talked about that. He's like, it's hard. It's hard, like when I know I need help, but I got to stay strong for everyone else. And a lot of players struggle during this time, the first part of their career, because they're throwing all this money, all this wealth, and then everybody's coming and like me, give me, and they don't know how to work through it. So, Ashley, I hope he gets better.
Yeah, no, certainly wishing the best for Ja Morant.